Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot, batteries not included. He helps you tackle even the toughest challenge. Will you be the first to raise the incredibly accurate Zapper and play games like Duck Hunt or action-packed Hogan's Alley and high-flying Kung Fu, each sold separately? Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System? Comes with Rob, Zapper, Control Deck, 2 controllers, Gyromite, and Duck Hunt.
All right. Welcome to Mediocre Rumble Brothers. I'm Udon, your host, and we have Jordan, Edwin, and Corey here. We are going to be doing our another monthly segment we can call Memory Card, where we're going to be looking back on different kind of consoles, a little bit of their history, and a little bit of experiences with each one of them. We're kind of starting at the obvious. We're going to take a look at the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES today, primarily because I don't think anyone here has particularly love or nostalgia for Atari or the Commodore or anything much older than that. Not to mention that this is really when we're moving, like the NES was like the start of the more or less golden age of console gaming. It's what a big factor that brought us out of the video game recession that all those other consoles put us in. But we'll get to that later. So before I start a little history lesson and sharing some information with you all, how about we just go around real quick and everyone just give a little blurb about what they think about the NES and if you had any like nostalgia for it back in the day. You know, did you own one? Did you play one at a friend's house? What did you think of it initially?
I had one growing up. It was not necessarily my first console because I did have an Atari, but I was like a baby, so like there's no way. Like I did play Atari as a kid just to like see stuff like Adventure, but the Nintendo was so fun. I played games like Dragon Power, Castlevania, Mega Man, a lot of Mega Man, honestly, which is funny that I didn't play any for the recording of the background for this on YouTube, but Legend of Zelda, of course, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear. A lot of the large franchises today have their first games on the NES. And, you know, I played those as a kid and I have a lot of nostalgia for those franchises because I was there when they started. And I played it a lot with my dad. There's a picture of me and him playing Mega Man together, and it's kind of cool. Like, I do like the console a lot. I look back at it fondly just because, you know, it was like my introduction into a massive hobby that, you know, I kind of based my professional career around. And you know, doing all of my side stuff that I do revolves around gaming, and it's kind of cool. That being said, the games are very difficult, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but it's still nice to go back and look at them.
I played a couple games back in my time. I when that was obviously was not when it was released, but yeah, we had a Nintendo as well. Did not play much of them. The only ones I can remember is a game called Marble Madness, Duck Hunt. That was one I played a lot, and I still remember my father telling me that that was the only game that I actually had a chance eating a lot because this is the time when you had thick glass screens that you could literally put the gun on it and just pull the trigger. And that was what I was doing mostly. I would throw the gun that came with the Nintendo thing for the duck hunt, and I would just point and place it on the screen and shoot the damn ducks on the screen just to make sure I got them. And I would do that all the time. The other game that I remember playing a lot of was Mario 3, I think it was. That was another one I played.
That's one, yeah, because you're humming the tune earlier. It's Mario 3's tune.
Yeah, that was the one that I really did enjoy quite. I did know I played a lot of that. Other ones I probably have played in the past. I played before, but I just don't remember what their names were, or even if I did. But there was quite a bit of other games that my father had in his collection. Those are the only ones that I really remember, and I've played it only usually when he was playing it. He was always playing some game. He basically just handed over for me to try it out. But the one that I do know also we had was the Power Glove. I don't remember what that was for.
You had the
but
Power Glove?
Yeah, my dad had it, but he couldn't even use it because he had really big ass hands. So it was just something I would put on, and I didn't play any games with it. I was just wearing it because it's so cool, and so I was like wearing it all the time.
All right, your turn, Edwin.
Well, my mom did have an NES. None of us could figure out exactly how to like actually make it work because like none of us really played it. We mainly played the SNES, so I don't have a lot of experience with an actual NES. So I just literally just been playing some random NES games in the Switch 2 retro gallery for a while, and there's like a lot of like really boring and playing games on there, but there's some gems in there, and two of them caught my eye a lot. But we'll explain later for that one.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the similar boat myself because Nintendo discontinued any support for the NES around the same time I began this horrible long journey called life. So by the time I was cognizant enough to be into video games, everyone had a Super Nintendo. So I was more into the Super Nintendo days. But going back and playing, I did the same thing for today. Not only was I like gaming history, so learning about the NES and its like historical relevance is like interesting to me. But looking at the games that was out for it, I kind of impressed because I had thought the NES was not nearly as powerful as it kind of was. Old games tend to impress me with the crazy shit that they are capable of. But yeah, so out of all Nintendo stuff, I probably have the least nostalgia for it because I don't think I've ever even played it as a kid. It was all Super Nintendo and N64. But anyways, we're gonna launch into a bit of history here, and I'll be just to keep engagement a little bit. I'll be asking questions. We got guys to like guess some of the factual statistics about some things. So here we go. We'll launch into it. So the former Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi was seeing advancements made in the electronics industry. This was about the early 1980s from other companies such as Atari and Magnavox, and seeing this, he started dipping Nintendo's toes into game development. So because they didn't have any like active like in-house like hardware development, they partnered with a couple like third-party companies, and they developed a few small things, most notably the Game & Watch series of like handheld games, which turned out to be a really big success. So coupled with that and the success of the Game & Watch, he fully decided to try and make Nintendo's own like home console to be both more powerful and more affordable than anything else on the market at the time, which is kind of a big ask, but because, typically the better it is, the more expensive it's going to be. So in that endeavor, they were pretty much successful. The NES, I'm not going to launch into techno jargon. I can spout off a bunch of stuff about the inner workings of the NES, but I don't understand it. The only thing that I do think is funny in context of the modern day, this thing had a absolute monstrous, whopping 2 kilobytes of RAM. It was insane. So anyways, I keep calling it the NES. At this time, it was called the Famicom because between the NES and the SNES, Japan actually was calling it something different. So when they designed the Famicom, it was successful in being like a really simple machine, but they also had a bunch of like basically empty parts for it for add-ons in the future, because even in the first days of Nintendo's foray into home consoles, they're already thinking about crazy add-ons that they'll make people buy for and that no one will want to use. So everyone here, just take a guess, your best guess. What do you think the console, what was the price tag for the console the Famicom was at release? You don't have to worry about yen, just put it in regular USD.
$299.
$500.
$150.
Okay, so Edwin was the closest. It was actually just about $100, which was roughly half the price of most competitors at the time. All the other similar things like the Ataris and whatnot were all running about $200. So they came out at $100, which was actually more expensive than they wanted it to be. They actually wanted it to price it more around $75. And it launched with only arcade ports. It launched with Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye, which is not a crazy good lineup of games in my opinion. But
so they already had games out at the time.
Yes, they already had like the arcade scene for video games was going very strong. Like the arcade scene is what predated home consoles. So yeah, Donkey Kong and all that stuff was already a thing. In fact, that was one of the main like mission statements making the NES, is just to make a home console thing to be able to port their arcade titles to.
Like a plug and play.
Pretty much. So the Famicom came out, and it was called a Famicom because I think it was something along the lines of like in Japanese, like a personal computer is called like a Permicom or something like that. So instead of being a personal computer, it's a family computer because it's meant to be played by the whole family in the living room. So they called it the Famicom. And in Japan, it released in, it was 1983 it released in Japan. And it came out with a really high level of success. It did have a couple bumps here and there. There was some issues of when it came out. In fact, they had to do a total recall of it. But once they recalled it and fixed it and put it back out, everyone loved it. So that was successful. And now they wanted to get into the U.S. market. Now, do you think it was now? As I stated before, the U.S. Our version of the Famicom is called the Nintendo Entertainment System, shortened to the NES or NES for short. Now, why do you and they also changed the entire thing. They changed the design of the console, the design of the controller, and the name. And the internals of it were the same, except for how the cartridges were actually stuck in there. But largely the internals, the motherboard was largely the same. Now, anyone want to take a guess of why they did that?
Like large electronics seems like a status thing, right?
Well, I meant more. I meant more like the original design was more fragile, so they wanted to toughen it up for like shipping overseas.
Right now, Corey's a bit closer. Do you have a guess, Jordan?
I was only aware of that color scheme that they had done for it, but the size of it never. Yeah.
Yeah. So our NES is much larger than the Famicom was. So as I alluded to earlier, one of the things that Nintendo had to battle was the video game market crash that was caused by not just Atari, but it was caused by an oversaturation of not just consoles, but games, all of which had virtually no quality control. So, and also a lot of like basically false advertising, over promising, under delivering, not too unlike how things are now. So this caused a video game market crash to the point where like the annual revenue of like the video game market as a whole went down immensely. Now, does anyone want to guess by what percentage that the video game market crashed at? Like how much revenue by percentage was lost due to all that?
69.
Well, the main market, the main market was just Atari and stuff, right?
Well, the problem is there was Atari, but there was actually a lot of others, a bunch of third-party things. There was too much choice, and it was all unregulated, basically.
Maybe like Midway and them, like whoever had arcade games and stuff. I want to say like I'll go with 80% because of the 80s.
I'm going to say 57.9%.
Well, Corey is the closest. It dropped by roughly 97% tanks of annual sales. It was a rough drop of basically annual profits being like 10 billion to 200,000. It's not, you can't point to any one thing, but like I said earlier, it was largely due to too many consoles that were too unreliable, too many games that were all so shit that like people were paying for them and they were so broken. I'm not going to launch into the story of the ET game for the Atari, but that was one of the things that broke the camel's back, how bad that was. So basically all that was leading to the video game market crash. So the market was in a horrible place. And not only was the market in a horrible place due to this and the fact that the only good thing going for video games was arcades at the time, largely people viewed video games as a toy, like still a source of entertainment, but nothing more than a toy, a children's toy. So when they had representatives in Nintendo had representatives in the US that took a look at the Famicom and were like, this thing looks like crap. So like we need to fix this because it looks like a toy. We have to fix it, make it look like something different. Which is why, so if anyone who knows what an NES looks like, it actually has a slot, not unlike I can't say a VCR because not a lot of people know what a VCR is anymore. Basically it has a lid that you push the cartridge into and close it, kind of like you're putting in, a VCR or DVD or something like that. I'm struggling to find an equivalent in the modern day, but there really isn't. So the reason our NES looks like that is Corey was kind of on the path. They change it to make it look more professional, less like a toy, more like something that's going to blend into, at the time, people's like VHSs and like stereo systems and whatnot you would have underneath your televisions at the time. Like it doesn't look like a toy. It looks like a proper piece of like electronic equipment that would go anywhere, right? The same thing with the color scheme changes to make it look just like more darker, more serious kind of stuff. So that's what led to a lot of the changes in the looks of it. And not only that, so I said the quality control. So on top of making the console look more professional, less like a toy, Nintendo was like, they understood the reasons for the video game market crash, and they were like dedicated to deliver quality games that always met a certain standard. Now, not everything passed through Nintendo. Obviously, as we discovered playing, there's still some duds here and there, but like even the duddiest duds on the NES were still like masterpieces compared to some of the crap that was coming out on Atari and those other consoles during the crash. So with all that working for it, it was an uphill battle for Nintendo to launch the NES in America, because a lot of people, when they saw this thing, was just like, yeah, this is a fad. This is not going to go anywhere. You know, no one cares. The only thing that was going good at the time was the Commodore 64, which is a personal computer. And that was another thing, is that people were much more aligned to personal computers like the Commodore 64 rather than some kind of like home console thing. But despite all of that working against it, when the NES came out and people finally got their hands on it, it was like a huge, huge success, to the point that it surpassed the Commodore 64 and personal computers as far as like percentages of people having this thing in their household. Like roughly, I think it was like about 30% of people in America had an NES in their house at its height. And like I said, it's not solely responsible, but because of this, you know, people started playing these games. The people, you know, video games became like, you know, fun again, for lack of it. They were fun. They were not under delivering and lying about, you know, what they were offering you. Like you got what you paid for, more or less. And it helped immensely recover video games into, you know, blossoming into the market that it is today. So that being said, so the NES did great. So does anyone want to, and later released in Europe and all over the world, essentially. So at the end of its lifetime, which was around 1995, is when they discontinued support for it, which was 5 years after the Super Nintendo release. So they had kept it going for a long time. Anyone want to guess what its final unit sold was?
For the console itself?
The console itself.
I believe it was like it's up there. I mean, I want to say it has to be a couple million, maybe like 30 million units.
All right, Corey has 30 million. What about you two?
2.5 million.
2 million? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I say 15.
Well, Corey again is the closest, but he is short by almost half. It sold roughly 61 million units over the course of its lifespan.
Damn, I was so close.
Yeah, you're so close.
He said 1 in 3 American households. That's crazy, though. That is wild.
And on top of that, does anyone want to guess what the best-selling game? Well, this is a trick question. So the best-selling game, kind of like with a lot of Nintendo's games, is technically the one that the console came bundled with. So what game came bundled with the console that you think was the best-selling one? And then what game do you think was the best-selling one that wasn't bundled with the console?
Maybe Mario Duck Hunt, right? That was bundled with it? Because I think it was Mario Duck Hunt. I know there was the track and field one, but I can't remember.
Those are the only two games I actually had for the NES.
Yeah, so, well, we'll start with the first one. So, yes, the game that came bundled with the console largely, because like with anything else, the NES came with a few different types of bundles you could buy, but the most common one bought came with Super Mario Brothers. And yes, I heard that a lot of them came bundled with also Duck Hunt, but it's credited to Super Mario Brothers as like the best-selling game because it came bundled with the console. So the second question was a game that was not bundled with the console. Which one do you think is which game is that sold the most?
Mario 3.
I don't know other games on there.
Well, Corey hit the nail on the head. It was Super Mario Bros. 3 was the best-selling standalone game on the console, and I think that was like 18 million units was sold of that. So yeah, and then I'm not going to go into all the add-ons with the NES, but the NES, like any other Nintendo console, had add-ons. It had, Jordan already said at the beginning of the episode, it had the light gun to play Duck Hunt with. It had Rob, which was this just cute little robot toy that you plugged in and he did stuff for you. One trivia thing I wanted to share with everyone is that one specific add-on, it was Japanese only, didn't succeed and come to the West, but something that I only found researching for today's episode that I didn't know before was that the NES had a disk drive add-on. Not the disk drive, we understand it. It was a disk drive for floppy disks. And weirdly enough, this is when Nintendo invented buying digital games. And what I mean by that is that floppy disks, unlike cartridges, were rewritable. So you could actually purchase rewritable floppy disks that would allow you to take it to kiosks that are located in whatever stores around Japan to buy and install games onto the floppy disk, which I know not everyone knows what a floppy disk is, but if you know what a VHS is, it's kind of like that. If you know what a VHS is, it's kind of like a DVD. If you know what a DVD is, it's kind of like a USB. I don't know how far, what kind of comparison I have to make, but there you go. But so you install whatever game is on there, bring it back to your NES and play whatever game it is. Now, what's more interesting is that, concerning today's politics well, not really politics, but the controversy around digital gaming, that it should be cheaper because we're not paying for, shipping and all this other crap. It actually was. So basically, a cartridge would cost you around $30-ish for the game at the time. Buying a floppy disk with the game on it cost you about $15. But if you had this rewritable floppy disk, buying a game and installing it onto it was only going to cost you around like $3, which is crazy. So this is like a weird invention back in the 1980s of Nintendo basically prototyping how digital gaming would work, where you're just kind of buying the data for a game rather than the game itself. Now, why didn't it work, even though if you're saving a ton of money on it? Well, it was basically about the same price as the console, if not a little bit more. So people weren't that crazy to cough up money for it, even if it did save them money in the long run. And the discs even had other capabilities like sound effects and shit like that. Were all like way smoother, like they had more clarity. They sounded better coming from the floppy disk, but they also suffered from like load times and stuff like that. So it wasn't a perfect system, and it didn't succeed in Japan, so they never brought it to the West. I just found it really interesting that I'm like, wow, back in the first console, Nintendo #1 already had all these crazy add-ons, but it's like they were already like trying to do this digital only thing and actually didn't charge you as much. So I just found that interesting, not super important, but I just thought that was really cool trivia to share. But we can keep going with the rest of this. So that being said, that's generally the console itself, right? So now, in preparation for this episode, we all dove into the NES library to play some of the games here and there, just to see, refresh ourselves, see how it was. That being said, now that everyone has dove their heads in, once you resurfaced for air, did you want to go back down, or did you want to scramble out of the water as fast as possible and run screaming?
I mean, it's different for me because of how like I feel towards them. Like I understand how they're hard, and I'd play some games for. That's why there's going to be a lot of other games on this video, but I play them for about like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, depending on if I was doing okay or just slamming my head against the wall. But it's more of like it's definitely a nostalgia hit for me. So I don't mind turning it on. I haven't played them in a long time, but turning it on was really kind of fun. And like going through my box of games, it's like, oh, well, I remember this one. I remember, and then trying to get them to work, doing the classic blow on the cartridge and press the button like 100 times to see if it'll load up on the screen. It was fun, and like I totally will end up doing that again. I mean, I kind of get it out like at least once a year just to kind of go back and look. Plus, for like indie ideas, I think it's a treasure trove of like content to go back and see how a game revolves around damn near a single mechanic.
Yeah, they really it was because back then the games were all about the gameplay. That's all you had going for it. The story was literally just like go. That's it. That's all you had. Edwin, since you had very little experience with NES games, how was your foray into it?
Well, I mean, one issue is just like I was just looking at like the selection that I had in front of me on the Switch, and I'm just like the box art is significantly better looking than any of these games actually are, or at least most of them. But it's like I've only been interested in it's a game called Solar Jetpack, which is much more complex than what I expected because I was literally playing like 3 other games that were absolute garbage, and then also Chrysalis, which is basically an interesting Zelda game. So it's like there are some good games on there because I really enjoy Chrysalis.
I love the box art for Nintendo games. They're so funny because
Well,
it's hand painted and they were altered for Western audiences.
yeah. A lot of the first party Nintendo ones just had artwork from the games, like the actual pixel art, because as I said, they were trying to not mislead people with their games. Like this is exactly what you're getting. They don't put a lot of them don't put on the fancy schmancy artwork that some of the other third party games had, strictly because they're like, we don't want to lie to people. It's like, yeah, it's nice artwork, but then you play the game and it's like 3 blocks on the screen or whatever.
Freaking put like screenshots of the game on the front or the back of it. Not that hard.
Well,
But is it?
Dragon Power does that, where there's a screenshot of the game with like the guy who's doing a karate kick, even though Dragon Power is technically a Dragon Ball game for the Western audience. But I think it's funny because one of the more notorious covers for a Nintendo game is the Mega Man 1 cover because Mega Man just looks fucking weird with a handgun.
That I remember that one. That one was fucking weird looking. But as with the game concerning the games, and not a lot of people really think about it, but a lot of first-party Nintendo titles and even non-Nintendo titles were born on the NES, and they are IPs that are so strong they continue today. Stuff like obviously Super Mario, Mega Man, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Castlevania, Metroid, Legend of Zelda. This is where they all originated on, was this console. Now, Corey might have some differing opinions on Dragon Quest compared to Final Fantasy, but largely these were the games that really defined the console itself. And I tried playing a lot of them, and I didn't like most of them. I ended up gravitating more towards Kirby Adventure, because I don't know, there was just something about it that, you know, Kirby's a lot more forgiving than these other games. A lot of these other games are just like, you die, game over. Here's a password. Fuck you. See you later. Like you fucked up.
Like two of those is like one game is just like a giant asteroid field in space, and then I was mashing buttons when I got to something, and then all of a sudden I'm on a battleship screen, and I literally couldn't do shit. And then you explained, I was like, you don't know what the controls are because that's what the book inside the case is for. I was like, oh, true.
Yep.
So I'd never fucking be able to play any of those games.
In fact, the game manual on the inside of the game's case, and like a lot of retro cases, like not only explain the game, but they explain the story, what you're doing and why. They might even give clues to like how to beat some of the early levels or something. Like the manuals had a lot of content in them, and jumping into the games raw, like with no context, is a bit rough.
Well, the manuals also had like 5 or 6 blank pages called notes, so that you can write your passwords down.
Well, stuff like this game called here's a unique game. I'm not going to speak too much on it because I only know this very random trivia about it. But there's a game called Star Tropics, which was a North American only release for the NES. It actually did not go to Japan. That is an RPG. I don't know what you're doing or why, but I remember when we talked about Metal Gear and the fact that one of the things we had to do was look on the back of the jewel case for that one code to contact Meryl. This game is one of the ones that did really early, like, fourth wall breaking, because I guess there's some point in the game a character tells you have to like soak the note and let it dry to get the message, because I guess there was a like in-universe written note that was in the box that you actually literally I think it was part of the manual that you literally had to like dip into water and let dry, and then there will be a message on it that tells you like the tip to beating that part of the game.
That's really cool.
It's cool, but a lot of people didn't know that because they were really hesitant to soak their manual in water.
Yeah.
It's like what is it? As like the Solid Snake or Metal Gear Solid 1 was like, look in the package quote for like the code that you need to continue.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny too because when I was playing Kirby, I'm like, this thing has like way more like fidelity than the other games do, which I thought Kirby got its start here too. But Kirby got its start on the Game Boy. This is actually the second Kirby game, but it's funny because this Kirby game plays not too dissimilarly to like Squeak Squad or any other like modern day 2D Kirby, and like same like powers, same kind of like level layout, same kind of like there's still a ton of mini games, and like the music was the same, and I was like, wow, this is like Kirby's DNA. It has remained very largely unchanged, ironically considering the character throughout the years of his like mainline appearances, which I found was really interesting. Which when I was looking it up, I was like, this game must have come really late in the life cycle of the NES, because I'm like, when you look at like, you know, Super Mario and compare it to Kirby looks like way better. And I looked it up, and Kirby Adventure came out on the NES in 1993, which was only 2 years before the NES's service was like discontinued. But what makes it even weirder than that is that the Super Nintendo released in 1991. So the Super Nintendo had already been out for roughly 3-ish years at that point when it came out for the previous console. And I'm just like, that is so strange. I didn't understand why that was a thing. Jordan, how was your experience? You're being quiet over there.
I'm trying to hold back my anger.
You're still playing that game?
No.
He's still playing. You're just screaming, turning off his microphone.
I'm just having cold sweats and just having flashbacks. You know, it's like it's not the best thing I've been used to. So I was going back to playing these games to get that whole nostalgic feeling. And man, they really bring out a lot of anger and hate. Like, I just don't know. I'm not fond of the whole you die and then it's just the end of the world. You're just back to the very, very beginning. It really sucks. I really wish that there was some way to save things and make it work. But what I did like about it was when I was noticing that when I was playing however many games I tested, they were very fond of trying to at least have more than one player playing the game, which is great. It may have been tricking you by saying two player, and you basically wait your turn when the person's done and you just play on the other controller. But a lot of them did say 1-2 players, and I thought that was cool. That's obviously you're gonna have someone else available that can keep you company when you're yelling and screaming at the game. But the graphics and such, they're okay. The reason why I never really touched it is because, again, the difficulty, and that's just me being a sore loser. I just cannot handle how difficult these games are. I was literally playing anything I could find, just getting my ass whooped every time. So that's kind of where I was more comfortable with the Super Nintendo, just because there was a lot more things available at the time, and there were saves. So I come back to this, play a couple games, and I've been very upset, and I want to stop. But I do. I did play Mario 3. Like I can't stand any of the other ones. Everything else is just garbage.
Have fun playing that. What is it? Fighting Force or Fatal Fury or something.
I was enjoying it until it pulled that bullshit card where it was game over, and I was assuming that it was just you played it and then you would go right back to that level, which is what it was doing. But it never told me that I was running out of permanent lives, to where if I accumulated too many deaths, then it was just the game is completely over. No codes, no nothing. It was just you're done. And that kind of pissed me off because I was really hoping that I could get some codes or something and re-continue.
Yeah. I mean, the games are kind of designed right to, like, their longevity isn't necessarily in game padding because of like a lot of extra stuff. It's just difficulty for you to just be punished until you finally overcome it and beat it. Because a lot of the games are maybe like 5 levels long, or like 10 levels maybe at most. I think the original Final Fantasy is like 15 hours. And that's a long amount for like an RPG game on the NES.
Yeah, and then there's games that have horrible angles, and they just beat the living piss out of you, and the landing position that you got to make is almost impossible. And for some reason, you want to move, you don't move. But then when you don't want to move, they want to move, and then you fall off. And then you assume that everything's going well, you're progressing, and then they give a big fuck you, and they crush you with a giant piece of metal, and you're just dead, and then they just call it quits. Which just literally tricked the shit out of you, because what is the main title? Zen Intergalactic Ninja, like Zen. Okay, this is gonna be peaceful. It'd be nice. No, I yelling, so pissed off. I'm still sweating.
Handsome Squidward.
Handsome Squidward. It's such a 80s, 90s like concept for like a theme. It's just Space Alien Ninja. They're like, we got everything. Let's throw it in there.
But as I said before, though, as frustrating as the game is, it is like should be hung in the fucking Louvre compared to the crap like the fucking E.T. Atari, shit like that would cause the crash in the first place. It is, and yeah, it's funny. I was shocked because I was like, oh my god, I didn't realize Super Mario 3 actually came out on the NES. Like, you went through Mario 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2 lost levels, and 3 because we had this fucky wucky where we had the weird fucking not really Mario Brothers reskin from another game sort of situation. Which I actually realized later that when the Game Boy Advance came out, they actually did like a lot of porting of games from the Super Nintendo and the NES to the Game Boy Advance because it was literally a portable Super Nintendo in terms of power. Because I played a lot of Mario 2 because I had that cartridge as a kid, the weird turnip throwing one. I played that a shit ton. I didn't realize it was a NES game. And the NES games, like I guess I had this misconception that the NES was like not graphic, and compared to modern day, obviously, but not graphically like up to code, so to speak. That it was more closer to Atari than it would be to the Super Nintendo. But no, I was actually pleasantly surprised because even though Mario Brothers is really blocky and shit, but then I was watching Corey play Castlevania, and like I said, Kirby looks really nice. Like, it has a lot of like really high fidelity, like good looking games. Like, I was confused by it, but like stuff like Wario's Woods was really colorful and nice to look at and shit like that. Like it was really cool. The other game I liked on it was I tried Twinbee and I tried Gradius, whatever.
Gradius.
Gradius. I think it continued to the Super Nintendo, but definitely in the NES was a very popular genre of game to make was the shmup, the shoot 'em up, where it's just you and a fuck ton of projectiles to dodge. I like the angle of Gradius better. I don't like a shmup where I also have to consider shooting shit at the ground. I just want to be able to shoot what's in front of me. Oh yeah, other stuff like Kid Icarus and Ice Climbers also made their debut on the NES, even though Ice Climbers' only relevancy has been in Smash Brothers since then. But
Not a good game.
yeah,
I do.
there was
not
a
like
reason
that
for
game.
that. There was a reason for that, and also why Kid Icarus didn't come back until like the DS era. And even then, I think he only came back because he was like semi-popular due to like Brawl or something like that. But yeah, there's a larger conversation to be had about the overall difficulty, as Jordan was saying, is like these games are fucking hard, especially stuff like Kid Icarus. And I don't know what the name of the game was that you were playing, Corey, but the same shit happened where they're both like vertically scrolling games. And God help you if you miss the platform, because if you fall to your death, it's done. It's over. You have a life bar, but if you fall, it doesn't matter. You're done. Game over. Back to the start screen. Here's your password. Fuck you. Just like Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Thunder Heli or something, the helicopter game, and it's just like, well, I can't dodge anything, and now I'm dead. And
No. The one you're playing is like a knight, and you fell like a pachinko machine.
Oh, Wizard and Warriors.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones in the video that'll be playing on this, where I'm just the tightest platforming you'll ever see in like an old game, where you're jumping on little fucking logs, and then you get hit, and it's like, great, I fell all the way down, or I was falling all the way to the bottom of like the ghost cave, I guess I was in, and it's just like, are you kidding? The whole time. It's like, there's so much shit I gotta climb up now.
Well, it's like
the games were like super hard instead of like padding the game with dumb nonsense or actual good parts of the game. It's just super difficult. So you just spend more time getting through one level than to experience like actual challenges or a long game in general.
Something that I kind of just thought of here with this is that like the games themselves, like us looking back at them being like, wow, these games are incredibly hard. And it's like, well, yeah, facts. They're hard as shit. But because it was the NES and there's not really a lot of games to compare them to, like everybody was just, they were designing games for the first time and they didn't have like the secret sauce yet. I mean, Nintendo did kind of have some with like Mario and stuff, but like Mario is just a simple platformer. A lot of people were just, yeah, this is a cool game with a knight and magic, and it's, who cares about the platforming? That's fun, right? And I don't even know how much like QA or like wide scale marketing. There's no demos. They're just making a game, releasing it, and hope it sells a lot. So they don't have any references, where we have like years of gaming behind us to go back and critically like dogpile on a NES game, when that guy was like, I've never made a game before in my life. We're just people that know how to do computer programming, and this is what they asked me to make. So it's like grain of salt completely.
So these games, I mean, they were competing against the arcade, right? Like they were trying to bring everybody to be at the house playing their video games. Is
kind of story, because like I
system
said,
is.
a lot of the early games on there were just ports of their arcade titles, and then it started making more and more games that were exclusive to the game consoles. But at the time, the game consoles were looked down upon. Video gaming was pretty much done only in arcades, in terms of like games that were actually fun and good were done in arcades. The home consoles were all garbage. So in a sense, they were competing, I guess.
Because that's the only thing I can kind of understand from it, is that if you're trying to go back, or at least trying to say that who we're competing against, and the only games that we have for reference are games that are built to be challenging enough to where they expect you to lose, so you throw over more coins and keep playing, so they make a profit. And I mean, if that's kind of where they're going with these systems here, and they're trying to make something be as fun, but they really don't have anything else, there might be a reason why these games are just so difficult, because they're trying to match a game that was originally trying to basically defeat you purposefully, so you are going to pay them money and keep going. And I don't know if that might be the intention for this.
I guess that does make sense, because they're a port. It's not like they're gonna remake it so that way it functions more for like a home console game. because that just reminded me of me playing Metal Slug, which is an arcade machine that just bullies you into giving it more quarters because it kills you in really shady ways. And then when it was ported to the Xbox, where I played it on fully, it didn't change at all. I was still getting like I'd probably spent like maybe like over $20 just trying to get through the entire thing. And so it was like it was ported, but nothing was changed. So it still treated you like a quarter eater.
You're talking like hypothetical $20, right? Because you're just saying like with the amount of times that you died on the Xbox version, it would have cost you $20. You're not like, yeah, it's that would be crazy if they're DLCing you for freaking game like continues.
And to do microtransaction to get more dudes.
I hope, no one at EA listened to that statement I just made. Nobody wants that.
No, what Jordan was saying what Jordan's saying makes a lot of sense because like first you port over the arcade games and you're like, all right, well now we got to make games for just the home console, and it's like, well, how hard are games? It's like, well, they're super hard, right? Because it's like, even in going back to Mario, when you're playing, especially in the later levels, like even in the first Mario, like you'll notice that they will put shit directly where they know you're going to be just to fuck you over. And that's how it goes in a lot of games. So, and what Jordan's saying, it makes a lot of sense because they're like, oh, well, this is just how games are made. They're hard, so we have to make them this hard and challenge the player by almost intentionally hitting them, because I understand what Jordan's saying because I play a lot of the when I'm at arcades I tend to gravitate towards the light gun shooters like the Aliens Cabinet or like House of the Dead or something. Yeah, anyone who's played those games knows that unless you already know what's going to happen, you are going to get hit by the cheapest bullshit because they are trying to take your life away and get more quarters out of you. And that's kind of, I guess, if they have no other experience, that's the only thing they're drawing on in order to make more games. And once they get more experience and they hear feedback from people, like they'll start editing it to where home console games came into their own thing and no longer act like that. But this in the early days with the wild west of game development, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and arcades did suffer like a monster like bankruptcy. They just weren't as popular to go to, and so these companies that had games in them, they're not making any money off of it anymore because nobody's buying machines, and the machines are pretty expensive, So they ported their games to put them on consoles, and they didn't really know how anybody would handle that. I mean, you got continues, but it's like, well, I don't want to make anything else. So if they're not coming to the arcades, we have to figure out how to sell them to people. And so, that's where you end up with a massive library of crazy shit on like one console that's in everybody's home. Because technically the home console is competing against, children's cartoons. It's competing for, it's like today, every screen around you is competing for your attention.
Yeah, it feels like that today when it comes to all the live service games, but it was just as true back then, just on kind of like a larger like entertainment factor scale more than anything else. And yeah, it's nice that all these franchises that we know and love today got their start on here. Unless you're a super fan or you're gonna play it on the Switch emulator and have the rewind function that you and the quick save feature that I highly recommend people use and very heavily abuse. It is very aggravating to play a lot of these games, which is why I stuck with Kirby, because it's probably like the least punishing out of all of them because it's Kirby. And even then, I have still died many times. I'm roughly about halfway through the game, and I'm probably going to finish it because I'm genuinely enjoying it. But they are very, very difficult, especially Metroid, where it's a fast game if you know what you're doing, but you just die. It's like, oh, game over. Here's a password. Fuck you. See you later.
Yeah, Metroid's very hard to navigate through if you don't know. Like, there's no indication of this is a breakable object. You don't know where the hell you're going. It just drops you in. And with the environment being so simple, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, yeah, the colors kind of change in the areas, but there's no environmental storytelling, really. Like I said, it's like no man's land for designing a sci-fi game, though the format is pretty cool. But like Castlevania, when you look at that game on like side by side with Metroid, which are both the same type of game, Castlevania is just so much better.
Oh yeah, well, it also probably came out later as well. And yeah, what Corey was saying, Konami did used to make cool games, and then yeah, stuff like Mega Man was also a pretty big factor on there. That's Capcom though. But it's just like I said, when you look at the spectrum of games that first came out for the NES and the ones that came out later in its life cycle, and just how much performance and like stuff that they squeezed out of that console for the first like really, really popular like home console, it's kind of insane. It's really impressive. Like I'm still genuinely impressed at like how everything looks and feels on the NES. Like I collect retro video games. I wanted to get an NES at some point, just for for the sake of having like basically a complete Nintendo console collection. But now I like genuinely want it because I'm like, oh, I want this. I want to get I want to go get Kirby Adventure for it. I want to go get Gradius for it. I want to get like Mario 3 and shit. Like I actually have games now I want to go and get for the NES to have in the collection. It was really interesting, and it's eye opening because like I said, I thought it was closer to Atari than what I would have thought it's closer to Super Nintendo. But yeah. Anyways, with that being said, does anyone else have any last thoughts you want to say about the games or the console or anything like that?
A lot of it would just be like game specific things, I guess, from like going through some of the things I was playing today, but that's just me because like I played the first Final Fantasy today. I played it before, but like looking back at some of these games that started their like lifespan here, you can still see like the elements of it in the newer ones. Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater's remake came out this month, and then I'm playing the original Metal Gear, and it still has enemies with vision sight. They have the thing that calls you and you press the button to talk to the person who's giving you your mission. There's different enemies. You have cover. You can move in and like beat up guys when they're not like looking at you, and go into the military base and stuff. And it's very simplistic graphics, but it's just like, wow, this is Metal Gear. Like that's Snake. You see the word Big Boss come across the screen and you're like, oh yeah, this is not a game that just came out. This game has been out. Final Fantasy's turn-based system, and it being actually like medieval fantasy with magic, and you see the sprites and you're like, oh yeah, I could totally recognize like the modern day armor that they have on the characters now that kind of look like this, or the world that you're in and the move sets, and you kind of see where they were before like they changed a lot of the systems. And it's I like the magic system from Final Fantasy 1. I think that's really cool. I don't like Dragon Quest 1 at all. That game is weird because you have to open your menu to do everything. You stand on the stairs, open your menu, select stairs. If you're at a door, open your menu, select door. If you're at a person, open your menu, select talk. If you find something, you have to open your menu and select search.
Is it like is it like a point and click text based
No,
adventure?
it plays just like Final Fantasy does. It's top down. You see your sprite, you walk around, you go outside the open world, you come across random battles and fight slimes and blah, blah, blah. It's exactly like a Dragon Quest game, but the way they handle the mechanics of it is you always have to stop, open your menu, and do something for it to even interact with the world. Also, the writing is very old English for everything, even when it's explaining how much experience you got, how much gold you found, how much damage you're doing, because it describes everything that's happening in battle. It's still charming, and you could see how like the design of the characters, even though in the video I get my ass kicked by a wizard because I think I walked to the wrong place and he beat me to death. But it's like, oh, I recognize this sprite, this like tiny sprite here in Dragon Quest 11. That enemy I've seen, and I've seen it across like history of games. Final Fantasy has this stupid ass mechanic where you buy gear and it says who wants it and you give it to them, but it doesn't equip it. So I was like walking through doing 1 damage and was like, what the hell? I bought all this armor. Why are they so hard? And it's like, oh, they have the gear, but I have to tell them to equip it.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you think I gave it to you for?
When you say old English, was it saying shit like thou casteth thwack?
Yeah, it was like, doth thou find the treasure to get thine key to open the door? And it's like, what
God.
the fuck? Or you have obtained, blank gold and doth damage. It's like, what the hell? It's just like a bunch of filler tests, but it's fun because it has an identity, right? Then I played the stupid Ninja Turtles game that's notoriously hard. Donatello is the one that you save for the end because he has the most reach. You play as Raphael because he's going to get killed first, and that's what's in this video. But it does kind of have an interesting.
He's going to.
It does have an interesting mechanic because that game has an overworld. It has 4 characters that you can swap between at any time of who you want to play as. And if one of them dies, you select a different one. So your lives are basically 4 lives because it's 4 characters that you're playing as. And that could make for a pretty strong like hook for like an indie game that's kind of plays like the Turtles game, but don't make it as hard as the Turtles game because Jesus. Then you some of the other one, DuckTales. That's kind of fun because the levels actually interact with each other. There's a place that you can go to and they'll be like, you can't be here. You have to get the key from Transylvania. And it's like, oh, and it takes you out of the level and sends you to Transylvania. And there's hidden paths, and Shovel Knight basically copied or was inspired by DuckTales, and that game has good graphics and fun gameplay. It's hard, of course. I'm dying a lot in most of the videos that you're going to see, but like going back and playing them, like I would recommend that a lot of people, especially if you're going to get into game design, to like play these old games to see what they did with the limited resource they have, because you have two buttons and a D-pad and you have to try and make the entire game, I guess, quote unquote fun. Whatever that might mean to the person that was designing it at the time could either be, Kirby, where that game is more of a casual experience, or Contra, where you're just like, Jesus, you know,
Where like
I have to memorize
I was
everything.
close to killing myself today. I need something to push me over the edge. I'll play
Yeah.
Contra.
Yeah, and I have a lot of oddball games. Like the Wizard and Warrior one was an oddball game. There was one I played that I didn't record that was funny because it's another Western game that has like Conan the Barbarian kind of character on it, but it's a ninja game where you are jumping from like Chinese folklore, kind of jumping from tree to tree, throwing ninja stars thing. And it's like, wow, that doesn't look anything like what the cover's telling me this game is. But I have a few of those. That's kind of fun. And then I guess to round out, side note, Jordan, the other game that we played was at your house, and it was Friday the 13th.
Oh God, yes. Jesus, the other one, Jason fucking comes out of nowhere and murders. Yeah, I remember that game. That was funny. It was, yeah, you were like in a forest, and you'd pick a person, and then you were in the woods, and you're just basically just side scrolling. I can't remember exactly. You were pretty much just going through up until the point where Jason would just appear randomness, and he would come for you. And I was there even a way to kill him, or were you just running away?
I don't really know what the point of the game was. I just remember like, because like we were really young, and I'd be like, let's turn it on and play it, because we were like scared of the game, because we would just like play it until Jason would show up, and then we'd turn it off and then turn it back on again. And it's like either you encounter him in the woods, or you like go through the camp houses and then he's in one of them and you're like, oh crap. And it's like a first person thing where I don't know. I don't even know what you're supposed to do except for just not die. But I
Yeah.
think one of the funniest things is when you are kayaking or across the lake and then you see him in a boat coming behind you and you're like, I can't imagine Jason like actually getting in a canoe, like the
Just
awkwardness of it rocking on the
angrily
lake.
rowing, just like
Yeah,
you see
he's
him pumping his arms.
he's just got like his machete stabbing at the lake to push it forward while he's wearing a life vest. Because isn't he like
Yeah.
scared of water anyways, is the
He-
lore? So he would just be like, I'm not getting in that shit.
he like gets close to you, but not close enough. So he's like awkwardly swinging his machete, but it's like it's not really gonna hurt you, and he's like trying to like not fall out of the canoe at the same time.
Whoa,
He was-
almost
You're
tipped it.
scraping on the back of your canoe. He's just scraping with his knife because he can't get to you.
Yeah,
He's like,
it's
what is going
lightly
on?
tapping it.
Yeah, because Jordan had that game, and I would play it all the time when I went over there to get babysat, and like we had fun playing that. And the Power Glove, the reason why he had it, because Jordan's dad also had Top Gun, which I think is what that glove was for. But I think we just put it on and would play other games, and because it's like I don't know how to use this, it was just cool to wear. And then they had the TV
I
show that
assume
or the-
most of those went, and is anyone
Yeah,
that had it?
The Power Glove was literally just like, this is really cool, but also useless.
Yeah, because they had the Power Glove like movie thing or whatever, which is about the kid that was, I don't know. There was a lot of marketing behind the Nintendo, which is why it ended up.
It was in a
everybody's
movie,
house.
wasn't? Didn't we talk about this one time? What movie? Like the Power Glove was like an integral part to some movie at the time.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, there was so many crazy things. And then Rob, you mentioned him. He's going to be in the commercial that I play at the beginning of this, but he's a Smash Brothers character, and that's probably what everybody would know him as now, instead of
Yeah.
like that giant piece of plastic that you have in the corner piled up with all the other cords that you have.
What did
Yeah,
he do?
And
He's like, he had his own software to basically like you could like do little games with him, and he'd respond to the stuff on the screen and do stuff like it was it was like fourth wall breaking like toy. You plug him in and
Yeah.
you play games.
He was
with him.
supposed to help you, like game or something like that. It's neat.
I thought it was like it played games with you as like the second player or something. Like that.
No, it's just a toy that like you play mini games. It's specifically programmed to react to, and it makes it seem like the robot's alive because he's like responding to shit on the screen by doing stuff in real life with his little setup. So
The idea of him being a player 2 would have been so cheap for them to do if anybody ever figured it out. But if every game that was programmed to have a second player was programmed to if the Rob was plugged in, that it would just enable an AI second player. So you think he's playing with you, but he's just a piece of plastic that plugs in to enable that mode that's in the game cart and not him at all.
God,
That would
that's
have
so
been
sad. That's
super
so pathetic.
successful.
It's just like, dude, it's like, and also for you kids at home that don't have any friends, we have the perfect accessory for you. Rob can sit next to you and you can look into his lifeless eyes as he plays with you in Mario.
Yeah, he just like, I beat it.
Hmm.
At what cost?
At
And
least he doesn't talk
and I
shit
just
about you when you suck at the game.
No,
You have to
be a
program
marketing.
that
He
in.
actually does. He looks at you and he's just like, God, you suck.
Garbage. No wonder your dad left.
Yeah.
Like,
God. I guess my question I had is that Udon, you were talking about before, like how they lost 90-something% and they were basically tanking. Was Nintendo the one that saved the day with this console?
There were other factors, but the NES is largely credited for like being the big push that it needed to start recovering, essentially. So
Okay.
that's why I
Okay.
didn't make any definitive. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the only thing that saved it, but it definitely had like a big factor in doing so because they're like, hey, what if we make games that don't suck? And they're like, oh my god, we haven't tried that yet. And then
Yeah,
suddenly
'cause
people
that-
wanted to play games.
Because that's kind of where I'm kind of stepping back a little bit. I guess I was too harsh with this system, just because again I'm hearing the history of it, and it does seem like a very good thing that was created. Because all I can picture this is the multiverse, and we end up being in the one where Nintendo actually just says, "I'm not doing that. This is too crazy. It's too risky. We can't do this." Makes me wonder how far this gaming would have continued. If not, would it have stalled and just not existed anymore? Like, would we have actually continued further on if Nintendo didn't make the actual step to say, we're going to take this step no matter what, we're going to create better games, this is going to happen?
If I had to-
It's a pretty, yeah, go ahead.
If I had to put my conspiracy theory hat on and give a wild guess based on the context of the world at the time, arcades were still doing like all right to good. They were starting to go out of style, but the thing is, people were more gravitating towards personal computers. So, unless some other like Atari or any other console maker at the time stepped up their game to actually make shit of quality, console gaming might not just might not exist, and it might be exclusively like a PC thing.
PC,
like,
yeah.
Right.
like that would
So
be the
Doom wouldn't have
direction.
been affected. Something like Doom wouldn't have been affected, or text-based adventures.
Yeah, like gaming
Yeah.
would have gone forward. It might have taken a lot longer for it to get in the mainstream or it becoming like something people were really getting into, especially like families and stuff like that. So it wouldn't have died, but it definitely wouldn't be the same as what we're thinking of nowadays. Like consoles might, like, unless someone else would have stepped up and made the console to bring it back, consoles probably just wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, with D&D like existing, we would have still gotten influence into games like Wizardry and Might and Magic and stuff like that. Like a lot of those high fantasy PC games existed only on PC, so I can't imagine that it was, derived from like the Nintendo.
Well, all I can say is that if we try to put things together here and think about, yes, the system doesn't sound that expensive, but remember the value that $100-something was back then. That would probably be equivalent to 500 or 600, maybe even more than that, today's standards of how much that shit would have been worth back then. It's just it's crazy risk. The people that would want to pick up that and play it, to say that you're like 1 out of 3 houses owned it, was pretty impressive to show that they were actually saying, I like this, we can enjoy playing this, I will pay whatever the cost is to get this, because I'm sure they didn't just get one game, they got multiple. So and the fact that they're making a game that is competing with arcades that are just very difficult, people were still going with it, people were still enjoying it. And I guess, that's just me personally just not enjoying it. But again, if I was probably in that time again where it wasn't look at, these things would have been probably mind-blowing to be able to experience this in that time when you literally had really not much to go off of, and saying that the that they had basically fall victim to, and saying we're not doing that difference like these games. I would just have to change my opinion on that a little bit more and just understand that this is from a different era. There there was things that were a lot more different. They didn't have much to use, and with what they came up with is still pretty impressive. Whether I like it now is a different story, but I still say that these games should actually get a little bit more attention and more praise for what they were from back then. Like there was a work involved, and I think that's pretty cool.
That's why I said I haven't played the NES a whole lot, but I'm super appreciative of it, like in a historical context, because I love gaming history and trivia and stuff like that. And the NES has so much behind it. Um, I was gonna say I was like the games wise, like yes, at the time they were great, but compared to gaming nowadays, even if you compare it to games that came out directly after it and its successor, the Super Nintendo, and then the one after that, the N64. Games are a bit rough, especially in terms of quality of life. So if anyone hasn't touched them, but you like series like Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Metroid, yada yada, I suggest looking at it. But that's about it. If you play it and like within the first like I don't know 30 minutes or so, you're like, yeah, I either want to punch my hand through the screen and not deal with this anymore. That's probably a good idea. Unlike I said, unless you're playing on the Switch and want to abuse the rewind and quick save function to get past all of that, then it's probably way more enjoyable. But it's fun to see where they came from. And like I said, outside of like a diamond in the rough you might find, because like I said, I'm probably going to finish, I'm probably going to finish that Kirby game. They're just like, it's really hard to play, especially, in adult life where you don't have a lot of time to play games. I don't have time to get really good at this one Contra level. And there's like still like 8 more in front of me. And it took me like 6 months to get past this one part.
There's a handful of gems out there, but there's definitely a lot of not so gems.
What you were saying before about seeing the DNA and like the games, I can't emphasize enough. If anyone likes 2D Kirby, especially the ones on the DS, Kirby Adventure on the NES is like pretty much that with a little bit taken away. Like even the animations and stuff. Kirby even does this cute little animation when he jumps and he hits the apex of his jump and he does like a somersault forward and then lands on his head and bounces a little bit. Like that all happens in the NES. Like the way he moves and how everything works, even all the enemies, I'm like, oh, I recognize that. Like it was like basically just playing like a beta Squeak Squad from what I remember. I've only ever played 2 other Kirby games and the only 2D one is Squeak Squad. And I was like, damn, this is like 1-for-1 Kirby. Like so much of Kirby came from this. Like, yeah, I know I said it was the second game, but Kirby didn't even have his copy ability in the first game on the Game Boy. Like this is the game he got his copy ability, his like iconic ability, which is super cool. And you can actually save your game in that game. In fact, hilariously enough, Kirby has autosave on the NES. You don't actually manually save it; auto saves when you beat a level. It's really cool.
And I was just going to add in, I got some website. Obviously, it doesn't mean it's true or not, but it was kind of cool because I'm looking at like how they're saying basically putting in price form adjustment for inflation. The Nintendo Entertainment System basically ranking around almost $600 for today if it was the kind of cost of how much you'd be paying from back then in 19.
And you have to remember, it was like almost half price of the competition. So the other competitions ranging over $1,000 in comparison.
$1,200.
Yeah.
Well, it's also
for an Atari.
Also back then is like you can have a whole household family on one salary, and also instead of having the arcade games on a home console, you didn't have to give your kid quarters or go drive to the arcade to let them play something. It was like you're home, that's good enough. I don't have to worry about you going outside either.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot to us, but I mean, it's just like even nowadays, people will find the money to throw towards that. I mean, a PS5 Pro costs more than that, and most consoles are just below that nowadays. So, not to get into super economics talk, but like it's almost as if, like theoretically, let's just say the PS5 and the Series X are costing us $1,200, and the Switch 2 comes out, and it's only like $500-$600. We're like, holy shit, that's a steal,
Yeah,
PC Master Race lost their chance.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, just thinking about that $600 for a console that you're hoping is going to be worth it. Like and especially coming back again, it was something that they were losing a lot of money, huge tank, and people can't trust systems. To throw $600 at a system, that's pretty crazy.
Well, I think like most things nowadays, if something is genuinely really good that impresses people, it's going to spread by word of mouth extremely fast. So if like just a couple of well-to-do families get the thing and then their kids play it and their kids tell the other kids about it, or their parents tell the other parents about it, and then it just spreads like wildfire. It's like, well, it's fine. let's just say it's the inflated price. Like, oh wow, it's $500. Like, yeah, but I mean, like the kids love it, and the games are actually good and whatnot. You know, the Atari, that thing, we paid twice as much for the Atari, and that thing's a piece of crap, but this thing's way better at half the price. People would start.
True water cooler conversation. Just because, again, there was 1980s, didn't really have much for media conversation and such. So it was by phone or by pager. It was really difficult.
Not even
again,
pager.
yeah, like you just said. Not even pager was around, yeah. So like it was really hard to get that to happen. Like, so newspapers and such. I mean, that's kind of where you were getting all of your information.
It had a uphill, like I try to emphasize it, like for it to succeed in the West, it had such an uphill battle that it did win just by its, they really stuck to their guns. It was cheaper than everything else. The games were of quality, delivered on everything they promised, and people were really happy with it.
And all the marketing made it look cool as hell to have one.
Yes.
Every commercial for it was like how cool it was to have one. Nintendo is a master of getting that box under your Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's the Nintendo Entertainment System. I think we had that was a nice conversation about that, and we're gonna keep doing this in the future every month with some other iteration, not just Nintendo consoles. Once we reach, PlayStation and Xbox, we'll branch out to other things. But yeah, I hope anyone listening has either learned something or, had a little nostalgic feelings talking about the really old retro consoles. In my advice, if you found anything today like interesting, kind of how Jordan was just doing just now, if you want to learn more, go look up go look up the Wikipedia articles or any other articles or like Did You Know Gaming or stuff like that about the NES and its games. There's so much trivia and interesting things that people manage to do with their games in the NES, and so much more trivia involving its like development and like what's exactly inside of it, what it's capable of, like what's exact impact was. Because I glazed over and skipped a few things that wasn't important for today to understand the NES. So if you're interested, go look it up. And the games, I already kind of said it. If you like those series, take a look at it. But if you're not having fun, you don't feel obligated to keep playing it unless you're going to abuse like save states and shit. But other than that, one more time, if anyone else has anything to say, we can close out. So going once, going twice. No? Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you for joining us today, folks. Once again, we are the Mediocre Rumble Brothers, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify and Rumble. And don't forget to keep exploring, keep playing, keep listening, and we will see you next time.
I always called it regular Nintendo as a kid.
Now you're playing with power.
Hey, this is Corey, and thanks for checking out Mediocre Rumble Brothers. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you didn't, that's fine too. If you'd like us to talk about any specific games, drop a comment below, or feel free to discuss your experience with the games that we've mentioned in the episode. You can also listen to our episodes prior to YouTube on our Spotify. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.